Good evening. Good evening, everybody. Welcome back. New season. It's a new season. Same old bloody Tottenham. No. It's not same old Tottenham. That's gutting, isn't it? Can't lie. I can't lie. I'm gutted. I know we all want to sort of do the old if we won, it's means we're European champions. If we lose, it's just it's a glorified friendly. It's not though, that would have been. I was buzzing. And we were so close. We were so close to sealing it. But alas, no cigar for Thomas Franks, man. It's quite hard to know how to dive into that one because I want to front load this with a lot of the emotion, right? Because it was a good game for Spurs. There's plenty of positives. And I'm not really, do you know what? I'm not at the end. TNT were sort of off on one about like Tottenham's mentality and all that sort of thing. I don't really sort of buy into any of that stuff. It's far too early for any of that sort of thing, to be honest. Like, if we'd have said before the game that it would have, not if it had played out in this way, because that would just be as gutting. I'm not going to pretend that we'd reconcile it and be all right with it. But what I mean is, if we were told before this game that Spurs would have put up the sort of fight that they did and come undone right at the sort of death like that, lose on penalties, you'd take it. I think you'd take a sense of pride from that in a certain way. A lot of people were catastrophizing before this, saying we're going to lose 5-0, 6-0, 7-0, 8-0, all that sort of thing. I actually, honestly speaking, receipts are there, tweets are there. I felt like we were going to win this one. I did feel like we were going to win this. I just sort of had a sneaking feeling. PSG hadn't played a game for a month, well, at least since the Super Cup final, and I just sort of felt like we might be underestimated by them, and I kind of feel like we were. But I can't lie, I'm really gutted about that. I'm really gutted about how that's played out because I when they got the goal like right in the kind of 85th minute, I did have that here we go feeling, but I still kind of felt like we were going to hold on for it, and I was buzzing about it. 2-0 up, going in at 1-0 at half time, 1-0 up, buzzing. A goal shortly after half time, and you're like, this is it. Like, this is good from Spurs. Like, we're playing well, we're good value for this. And then it just kind of fell away a bit when we took off players like Palhinha, we took off Richarlison. We lost that edge that we had, that level of control. I felt like when I was watching that first half, it felt to me like clear straight away the impact that Palhinha had on, I guess, just our ability to get a foothold in the game. We felt so comfortable. We felt it looked like we were as comfortable in possession as I've seen us in, honestly, in years. And I don't want to overstate him as a player, but I'm just saying, like, it feels like I don't feel like we've had that level of comfort since we've had players like Dembele, Wanyama in our midfield, And I think that's kind of what we were hoping for with Palhinha. I know some people aren't overly convinced with him as a signing and what his signing represents for Tottenham and the way we're going to play football and for what Thomas Frank wants from this Tottenham team. But at the same time, I do feel like Palhinha was quite a necessary thing to add to our side. I feel like too often last year we were walked through. We had players like Sarr, players like Bergvall, Bentancur, taking on an additional level of defensive responsibilities, and that's obviously a part of their game. That's a part of their game for any sort of modern midfielder, any modern footballer, anywhere they are on the pitch needs to be versatile. They need to do a variety of different things. But still, somebody that's like a specialist, basically, a specialist tackler, a specialist get stuck in there, is something that we've debatably lacked for some time, and it was very nice to see that be so immediately impactful, and I feel like it was. I feel like having Polina there gave us an additional level of control. And I also have to shout out Richarlison, because the way in which he held up the ball at the front, he had that one shot as well, when he kind of took it down and had a shot from about 20, 25 yards or so. Keeper was had to pull off a good save, but he was lively, he was bright. I felt like he was reading the game really well. He was just like I said, just holding up the ball really well, bringing Kudus into play constantly. And it just felt like when we lost those two, our control just went. We weren't quite the same proposition anymore. So it's helpful when you can actually identify where things started to go wrong. And I think, look, the other thing that's important to note that we need to really maintain here is PSG are an exceptional side. Right? PSG are exceptional. We didn't show it at all times tonight. It took them quite a while to get up to speed, but we have had a pre-season. They haven't. I know they've played the Super Cup, whatever. They are an exceptional team. They won the Champions League. They were, I think we can say, quite comfortably the best team in Europe last year. Unbelievable. So you have to bear that in mind. It is still gutting to lose. It's still gutting to be 2-0 up until the 85th minute and lose that. When it goes to penalties, obviously it's anybody's game. If it went to extra time, they probably would have won as well. If had extra time still existed in the Super Cup and they hadn't binned it off, they probably would have still won it. So yeah, it's gutting. It is frustrating, but there is plenty to take heart from there. It was a real gutsy performance, real fearless performance a lot of the time. Like I say, I thought Polina was great. Sarr was on another planet in that game for huge parts, especially in that second half. Sarr was unbelievable. Just gave us such thrust going forwards. And one of the things that I love about him, that I'm always going on about, is the fact that he is very good at being that bridge between defense and attack, starting our attacks, building from the back. And the amount of times he would manage to get in, clean up, break up PSG's attacks, and then instantly be going down the other half, going down the other end, trying to get Spurs in the kind of dangerous positions, was lovely. It was lovely to see him doing that. But like, he was doing that on another level tonight than I've seen him do for a very long time. So that's something to take a lot of heart from. Bentancur, for huge parts of this game, actually was brilliant. I dare say having Polina there to pick up a lot of the defensive slack, a lot of the running, probably allowed him to focus more as an outlet type player. I won't say he did less running, because he didn't. He was all over the place in a good way this evening as well. So, I don't know. Kudus, I felt like I said something after about 15 minutes. I wasn't jumping on his back. I was just simply saying that, like, it felt like at the beginning of the game, it felt like he was just kind of trying quite hard. It felt like he was trying. He was very eager to impress, and he hadn't quite found his rhythm. But then he did, and he just looked brilliant. Like, as I sort of said in a couple of pods I've done over the summer, if I'm being brutally honest, I wasn't that excited. I wasn't particularly buzzing about the signing of Kudus. I probably should have been, like, looking at how brilliant he is now, how brilliant he has been throughout a lot of the preseason. like really, really good, really effective. Um, Not only in an attacking sense, not only his ability to sort of run at the opposition players and scare them and get in their faces, which is great. In a defensive sense, he tracks back a lot. He works really hard. Um, Breaks up a lot of their plays. He's a really like physically like intense player. He's really fast, really strong, technically sound. Like it's looking like a phenomenal piece of business for 55 million. I don't really know what West Ham were doing, selling to us for what seems to be a sort of cut price. Or maybe he had a year left. I can't remember. I mean, maybe his contract was running out or something. But really, really, really excited about him. Really talented, really great performance overall from him tonight. Um, Jed Spence. Jed Spence. Do you know what? Actually, I'll do more of this at the end. I talk about the players more like individually and stuff. But Jed Spence, fantastic tonight. And with Thomas Frank, I think like when I first saw the lineup come out, I made a little joke about the fact that he's never beaten the allegations because everybody calls him like murder ball, and they say it's going to be like Mourinho and all that type of thing. And when you saw that kind of like the starting 11 that we tweeted out before the game, it looked very defensive, right? Like it looked defense heavy. Three centre backs on the pitch. You know, and not an awful lot of attacking outlet. I mean, Richarlison is a striker, but he's if you can say he's the most sort of defensive striker that I've seen Spurs have for quite some time. I'm sure you sort of get what I mean. So I was thinking, I understand it. Don't get me wrong, I understand it. We're playing against PSG, all this type of thing, right? But what I will say is, Spurs took the game to PSG completely. We weren't sitting back. We weren't waiting for them to kind of hit us and then we were going counter against them. Not at all. We were getting in their faces. We were being busy. We were being aggressive. Um, there was a lot to like take heart from that. And I'm honestly, I was shocked by in such a short space of time how much like Frank has clearly laid down at least a kind of a set of principles or a foundation for the way he wants to play. Because I thought Spurs looked smart. I thought we looked very well organised. It looked like there was a clear plan and we were executing it very well. It looked like the Spurs. It looked like the Spurs players were in sync. They were very in tune with one another, all working hard for one another, providing outlets for one another, covering one another, like breaking up play, all just working in tandem, working as a unit. And that was great. That was really heartening. No fear, took the game to PSG, and came ever so close, and not quite. But it is annoying. It is kind of frustrating, but not kind of. It's very frustrating. I'm gutted. I'm gutted about that. I am gutted. Um, but I take a lot. I take a lot from that game. I take a lot of heart from that game. Um, it's great to see Spurs playing that well. And the thing is, I'll save this sort of chat for the more like pods and I'm talking to somebody else and stuff. But it does make me reflect on, there's a lot of talk this past few days about Savinho, about adding Eze as well. We might end this window signing neither of those players. We might end this window signing both of those players, right? I don't know. So far, I have my own opinions on which way I think it will go, but equally, there's plenty of talk about Spurs having money, wanting to do things a bit differently. So maybe let's just keep our powder dry, and just see if people in charge of the club can spring a surprise on us this summer window. It does feel like a weird one. It does feel like maybe something could happen. So we'll see. But what I would say is if we do get those two across the line, it's very exciting. It's very exciting because we looked really, really good tonight. Um, and I kind of feel like if you've got somebody like Eze in there who, all right, I get it, he's not Kevin De Bruyne, but still one of the Premier League's like better, better performing, I would say. Is he a strict? Do you call Eze a strict number 10? Because I'm not sure that he is. I think he can play in that role. Some might call him a winger. Some might say he's a sort of, you know, he can fill up as a number 10 of sorts. But whatever he is, he's a very talented player. He makes things happen. I think people kind of, I think people like overthink what he does, what he can do for Spurs. I think just to be a bit like Brexit about it, he's just really good at football. He's really good at football, and it's good for Spurs to sign really good players. He's a really good player. He's got a really high profile. It would give everybody a lift. After Sonny's gone, after Maddison's been injured, it would give everyone, players, fans, a lift around Spurs to see that we're sort of making moves. We're bringing one of the best players in the Premier League. You know, with all due respect to Palace, outside of say, the top 6 to top 8 band of clubs. You know, it continues that tradition that Spurs have been doing of getting players who are the best of the rest. You know, if you consider like Solanke, you consider kind of Kudus, you consider a player like Maddison as well. You know, that's the sort of thing that we've been going for, right? And Richarlison, another kind of example of that as well. And Eze would be somebody else that falls into that. And I'm really here for that. I've spoken about Eze before a lot, and I just kind of I look at like periods of tonight where I feel like just if we just had that one other little pass somewhere. I think Richarlison and Kudus played really well together actually tonight. I think they played really, really well together. But if they had somebody else just sort of like playing around them, somebody who was able to exploit a bit of the space that those two were creating when they're pulling sort of those PSG players out of position, exploiting those kind of like those pockets that were opening up. Somebody like Eze would be like beautiful at doing that. I just think we need a bit of lift. So yeah, plenty to take heart from tonight for me. Let's see what some of the people are saying. Praetorian Dwarf says that game was ours for the taking and we blew it. I think, look, I know it's frustrating, mate, and I'm not policing the way you feel about that or anything. I'm just simply responding to what you're saying. I think it's, I get it. When we're 2-0 up, you can say the game is there for the taking for us. So I kind of get what you're saying. But I think to suggest that any sort of match against a team of the quality of PSG is there for the taking, I don't think that's kind of a fair representation, should we say, of the balance of a game like that, I reckon. Beat Plate says, I think overall it was a really promising showing from us, but I worry a bit about blowing 40 mil of our limited budget on Tell. It doesn't seem like Frank really rates him. Look, I think we have bought him. We've done it. Like, we clearly see something in him. I would hope that Frank has had some input in that deal. Like, obviously, we've sort of brought him in on loan last year before Frank was even at the football club. But I would hope that Frank got to have some say in the decision to make him permanent or not. He's a very young player. He's got a lot of talent. I know he missed a penalty tonight, but that happens. Footballers miss penalties. It's annoying. And, I think what adds to the frustration is he did one of the annoying types of penalties, didn't he? Because we had Solanke and Bentancur step up and just give it a good old like Brexit penalty. Top corner, step up, no nonsense, bang, back in the net. And then, like PSG's first penalty, that weird creeping up to the ball thing, missed it. Tell sort of the stop, stutter, start, just hit it in the back of the net. I hate those type of penalties, man. I really do. Like, I think more often than not, they miss versus just Brexit penalties. Just run up and smash it. Just do it. Look, I'm not going to jump on that. I think he's a very promising young player. Do you know what I mean? Like, let's see what he can do across this season. That's my sort of thing with him. Marcus said new surroundings, 5 stars. Yeah, I'll go into some of this a bit later. I'll talk about some of this in a bit. So thank you for pointing that out, Mark, and I appreciate it. We'll talk about that in a bit though. Lucan says my head is gone. I know it's a bit. No, don't get it back on, mate. Look, get it back on. Screw it back on. Get it back into position. It's all right, mate. It's all right. We played well. It's a glorified friendly. It's not. It's not. It would have been lovely to win. I'm being facetious. But don't let your head be gone. Come on, I know what you're saying, mate. Feel what you got to feel. Greg Brazell says 60 minutes of prime Stoke, followed by an old school Spurs fold. We've got our Tottenham back. No, I don't. I'm not going to have that, Greg. I don't think that was prime Stoke. I think we were. I think we were proactive. I think we were at them, and yeah, no, I think that was all right. Gavlogi says, I think that Frank has learned a lot about his squad of players in the games against Bayern and PSG. He looked quite exacerbated towards the end. Yeah, but maybe he has learned a lot about the team, but maybe the main thing he's learned is that both PSG and Bayern are massive, and it's going to take a bit of time for Spurs to get up to that level. And I think that's a. I know it annoys people, but that's just the truth of the matter, isn't it? That's kind of where we're at. I don't think we're going to sit here and say we're one of the best teams in Europe. Those two, I mean, Bayern definitely not as much as PSG right now, but historically speaking, Bayern have always been one of the top teams in world football. PSG have aspired to be that for quite some time, spent a lot of money, and finally cracked it last season, and have arrived at the top of the table, haven't they? So I think Thomas Frank, like anybody in football, anyone in professional football, is wired differently to the majority of us who aren't working in football. Ultra super competitive people. They're driven by that want to win, to succeed. Like their job is working in like competitive sport, there's obviously something in them that's driven by that. They were probably the person in their like family dynamic every single time there's a Christmas game of Monopoly or cards or anything like that. No, you cheated. No, the rule says this, and getting out the rule book and debating whether or not in Scrabble you can use the numbers on the letters twice, and lifting up the tiles and say, no, I'm counting that when they've put an S on the end of a word. Do you know what I mean? It's that type of thing. So Frank, if he's looking frustrated, it's because he's as a person wants to win. But I would say, I would imagine, me as somebody who isn't a professional football coach, but I would still say, I would imagine he would have watched that game tonight and felt very happy with his players, and was probably, just like the rest of us, really quite frustrated that we didn't manage to get it over the line, because it would have been lovely, wouldn't it? But we didn't, and that's that, James Forster says, if the performances of Polina and Kudus don't motivate Levy and Langer into buying more first-team ready players, then I don't know what will. They were both brilliant. Yeah, I think that's pretty spot on, mate. Anon says, I'm rattled, lads. That might be the only time in my life we get to a Super Cup. It could be. It could be, Anon. Yeah, I know. Try not to think about that side of things, but maybe it's not about all the Super Cups that you win. It's about all the Super Cup friends that you make along the way. Something. I don't know. Ollie Whitefoot says, outstanding for 60 to 70 minutes. Lots to be positive about going forwards. Their subs had a positive impact. Ours had a negative impact. That's probably fair to say. Squad depth hampered us. Now let's add some quality. Bang. Yeah. Nice. In the pod. That's it. Ollie's done my job for me. James83 says, I thought we were good. Lots to be positive about. I still think we are lacking going forwards. Good display. Shame we lost though. Yep, I agree again with that, James, entirely. That's kind of why I'm on the sort of Eza thing. Like I feel like he is somebody that would have added a lot tonight. So Gage Tronic says Tell should be walking home. Let me just see. Sorry, I've got this sort of tends to. Seymour Shepherdson says we haven't seen subs change a game like that since Poch took off Lamella during the Kane Mask North London derby. CFC says there's only one team in London. Great. Well, let's just hide this user on this channel. Bye bye. Anon says as well, Savinho feels like the wrong target. This game emphasised the need for a link between midfield and our forwards. Yeah, well, I like the idea of Savinho because he's an exciting player. But had I to choose, I'd be taking Eza every day, to be honest. I'm just a big fan of Eza. And I think what he could do for us in this system would be great. And Leslie, hello, mate, says, disappointing end. We played well up to 75, 80 minutes. Subs didn't seem to make an impact. Roll on new season. Yeah, I mean, that's the main thing. Like, I'm actually, I hit the point. I was saying this on like one of the pods on the Monday pod with Phil. I was saying that like I've hit that point in the summer now where I can't wait for the football to be back. Like, and it's not entirely like, oh, I'm buzzing to see Spurs because I'm so excited about Thomas Frank and all this type of thing. Just like football is like such a massive part of our lives, right? Like it adds such a structure to everything that we're doing. In many ways, obviously it adds that sense of like social lubrication, as they say, gives you something to chat about with people, doesn't it? Because we're all such witless dullards. Speak for yourself, Jack. Witless dullards without football and being able to sort of talk about that type of thing. Who wants to talk about the Fantastic Four a week after you've watched that? Yeah, I mean, great. Wow, nice one. They punched the baddie man in space and won. Great. But football, it's that ongoing sort of theatre, isn't it? That opera, if you like, in our lives. So I'm buzzing for it to be back. I really am. But my point is as well, after tonight, I'm actually really looking forward to seeing what we can do this season, because maybe we are going to be way better than I thought we were going to be. And even more so if we had a few more players, which will be, very exciting. Keith Anderson says, leaving out the penalty, Tell just isn't up to it yet. Maybe in a few years, but not yet. Well, yeah, and he's a young player. I think if we continue to integrate him, continue to sort of see him steadily, hopefully improve and be an asset to the team, amazing. I think we need to sort of hopefully, again, do whatever you want to do. But my opinion, I think we got to maybe like not be resting everything on him to be like this superstar savior that is gonna, be the next Sonny or whatever. And just see him as like a talented young player who can hopefully improve in time and be of real sort of value to us in a playing sense, if you like. Coys McCoy's face says that was gutting. I think for the first 60 minutes we looked pretty good The team who finished 17th last year gave the European champions a fair game, so still pretty optimistic. Sarr really good as well. Yes, mate. With you on that. Best of TH says, come on, lads, let's not be too hard on the lads. They gave everything except for Tell. Oh, come on. Come on. That's harsh. Scott Stevens, I would have rather lost 3-0 than like that. Only Spurs, yeah. Spursy, as they say. For anybody listening to this, I'm wearing that Nike Spursy t-shirt, and I held that up to the camera for anybody who is watching this. Michael Anderson says, how can Van der Ven be on the third penalty? I found that defeat utterly devastating. Yeah, I am really gutted, and I was quite surprised to see Mickey stand up. Like when I was watching it, and it was a good point because I got entirely what she was saying. Charlotte was sort of saying he's just so big and fast. You kind of, you almost don't trust him taking a penalty, like a sort of in a physics sense. And I got entirely what she meant. But funnily enough, we were sort of taking it when we were talking about it, like from the perspective he's just going to rocket one over the top of the bar. But it was actually kind of, a low shot, not hit far enough away from the keeper, not really enough power on it. It's a shame, feel bad for the lad. Jask says, love that we take throw-ins seriously now. Danso has a throw-in on him. Frustrating watching all the boys sit back as a flat back five on the edge of our box. PSG had all the time to make a pass. Yeah. Emmanuel says, come on, why did he change Kudus and Sarr and Richarlison? Yeah, I guess I think like Richarlison and well, he didn't say Polina, but Richarlison and Polina are starting to look a bit tired. Archie Gray I do like as a player, but it's not a like for like swap with Polina, is it? So we'll see. HS says, as soon as we shut up shop, I knew. And Chris Tucker says they brought on world-class players to win the game. We brought on Gray and Bergvall, who are not of that level. I think that's fair. I think we all know they're both very exciting young players. They've got big futures ahead of them, but they're not quite on that level yet. But still, Spurs aren't on that level. It would be lovely if we were, but we just aren't, are we? So that's kind of where we're at right now. Let's do the players. I'll do the players now. So Vicario, funnily enough, didn't actually have a lot to do until it got to the penalty shootout, where I thought he was not very good. If I'm being honest, if I'm being harsh, Tell is going to get a lot of pelters, but I don't think Vicario really did anything in that penalty shootout. PSG's penalties were all pretty good, but I don't think he went the right way for any of them. I don't think he's like a priority. I don't think it's like a priority to upgrade on him. But, as we're talking about Spurs being at a certain level now, when we aspire to get from like a mid-level to a higher level, I think Vicario is one of those players we are going to need to consider upgrading. If that's Kinski, maybe. I don't know. I definitely don't think Kinski is there yet. I know a lot of people like his distribution. I know he comes with a great reputation as a very promising young player. I don't think he is of a quality yet to be replacing Vicario consistently. If I was to sort of liken it to Arsenal's situation, I think they had a goalkeeper in Aaron Ramsdale who was pretty good at quite a lot of things. And when they went in for Raya, a lot of people felt like that was kind of harsh. Um, and many people were kind of surprised. And then after not much time at all, I think it became abundantly clear why they felt the need to upgrade on Ramsdale. And I just kind of feel like that's how we will feel about Vicario. And look, like I'm not saying the guy is useless. I'm not saying he's terrible. All I'm saying is I don't think he is a top level goalkeeper. So, I think we have more important, like pressing areas of the pitch we need to address right now. We definitely need that sort of number 10 player. We need somebody that can link our midfield to our attack. With Madison gone, with Kulusevski out for a sort of indeterminate period of time, we need somebody to fill that void. We, debatably need maybe more fullbacks. I'm not as sure on that one. We debatably need another sort of striking outlet. Maybe Brennan Johnson, some people have said, could play as a sort of number 9. I don't know. The thing is, I'm not saying go out this summer and spend 80 million pounds on a replacement goalkeeper for Vicario. I'm simply saying I think he is a talented goalkeeper to a point. I think he makes some very good reaction saves. I think, however, his distribution is really not very good. I think his concentration isn't always the best. I don't think his decision making is always the best. So, that's that. But I'm not blaming him for tonight. Again, I'm not trying to single him out. I'm not trying to dig him out. I just kind of feel like games like tonight kind of show you that, he's not, I don't know, kind of that level that I sort of hoped he might be for a while. Pedro Porro, I thought was brilliant tonight. I thought he was really, really good for large parts of the game. I think he started to tire a bit towards the end, but yeah, really, really promising. I think he's been really promising actually all pre-season under Frank. He's either relishing this system or he's just relishing the opportunity to establish himself as one of the main figures. And I think he kind of has done in the past, but maybe now, especially with Sonny going, with Kane gone, with Lloris gone, Porro probably sees himself as, one of the more senior members of this team, and as such can establish himself as one of like the club's main guys. And I think he takes that responsibility on. And it's good to see him. He's a very talented player. I think he's a really talented player, an incredible athlete, and technically a very sound footballer. Can sometimes, as we know, can sometimes look a bit suspect defensively, but I didn't really see anything from him tonight that gave me any sort of pause for thought, any cause of concern or anything. I thought he was largely very good and thriving. Kevin Danso, Big Dance, I thought was really good. Honestly, I thought was really good for the whole game. Put in a number of really good challenges. Marshaled his sort of section of the pitch really well. Was measured, was composed in everything that he did. A really, really talented footballer. Really, really happy with that as a signing. Christian Romero, new club captain. Great, very good performance from him. Solid. Took his goal well, I guess. Was he expecting to score? Was he trying to get it across the box? I don't really know, but it went in. Well done. Got a goal. It'll be, hopefully it's a clean slate with us and him and, the whole sort of narrative around his Tottenham career to date. That's the way I'm looking at it. And so I'm looking forward to that. Mickey van der Ven, obviously, good finish for the first goal in the right position. Largely very good performance. Shame about his penalty at the end. Just a brilliant player, isn't he? Jed Spence, I honestly think I think he's so much better than like so many people give him credit for. I think he's an unbelievable player. I really do think he's an unbelievable player. Um, he he had Hakimi like on toast for so much of this game. I think he got done for their equaliser, which was a shame right at the end. But for the most part, both defensively and offensively, he was such a handful for PSG. And do you know what he's got about him? He's got that sort of persona that like Danny Rose had in many ways, where like they don't care. They're not overawed by the occasion. They're not going to be defined by people's sort of expectations for how good or not they are as a footballer or how good or not their opposition is. They seem just very like grounded, very kind of in some ways like quite, you know, emotionally assured. I don't need to keep the comparison up. I'll just talk about Jed Spence. He just seems like a very emotionally assured individual who seems to just have that sense of like, I'm a bloke, he's a bloke, he's not a superhero. I don't care if he's on telly a lot, and a lot of people talk about how good he is. I know I'm really good as well, and I'm really quick, and I'm strong, and I'm technically really sound. I'm really good at my job, and I back myself. And I think that just really like comes out with Jed Spence with his performances like 99% of the time. I think he's such a talented player. There's a lot of talk that we're going to give him we're going to give him a big new contract. So great, much deserved. He's a brilliant player. I think he's a wonderful, wonderful player. João Palhinha, I think was he was great. Really, really good. Made a huge difference to our team. I think it provided us a certain level of control, like I say, that I think has been absent for quite some time. And let's see much more of that. Do you know what I mean? Let's have more of that, please, lad. It was a shame to see him go off. I guess he was flagging. Apparently, it was incredibly, incredibly hot out there. Incredibly hot. So, I think these lads can be forgiven for feeling quite drained after a while. But he's had a year of not like playing that much football. So once he's back up to speed, hopefully we'll be able to get sort of longer performances out of him, because we're going to need it. Pape Matar, I thought was fantastic tonight. Really, really wonderful. I really, really have a feeling that this could be a massive season for him. It seems like evident thus far that Frank really has he thinks very highly of Sarr, quite clearly. Really rates him, really sees him as important for this team. So, there's every chance that we will see a lot more of him starting for Tottenham consistently. And if he's playing alongside somebody like Palhinha, maybe he can be freer to express himself more than in previous iterations of teams that he's played for as a Spurs player. He's people forget how young he is, right? I think he's anybody that's watched this or listened to this pod for a while will know my thoughts on Pape Matar. I just think he's a very gifted player. Really excited about him. Rodrigo Bentancur, very good performance tonight. I thought very good performance, a lot of running. Hopefully, this is some sort of sign of him managing to get back a level of fitness. I've often had worries about his physicality. You know, I think he's had an ACL on both knees, I want to say. At least some serious kind of injuries on both of his knees that you know, you can understand why a player might lose their edge somewhat, especially physically. And I do, you know, I have suggested that might be the case of him several times in the past, and you know, remains to be seen whether or not that is the case. But he was very good tonight, so we'll see. Mohamed Kudus, just like I say, I think it took him maybe 10 minutes to get into the game, to get into the swing of it, to calm himself down and just focus on his game, focus on what he's good at. And then he was flying. A wonderful signing by the looks of things. Looks like he's going to be a seriously important player for Tottenham. Whoever we bring in, if we bring anyone else in towards the end of the season, but whoever comes into the team, you know, they're going to have competition for being one of our most important, alongside Kudus, at least in an attacking sense. Clearly a very, very talented footballer. So exciting on that. Richarlison, great performance from him tonight. Really, really wonderful performance from him tonight. And yeah, much more of that, please. If we are, you know, it feels like we're not going to get any deals for Richarlison. It doesn't feel like we're going to be selling him. Sort of feel like that might have been done by now. That the noise around that seems to have died down quite a bit. And it also feels like Frank quite likes Richarlison as a player. So maybe that's part of the reason that we haven't heard more talk about him going. Not just that like somebody doesn't want to pay whatever fee we've set for him, or something that, you know, has often been the kind of the reason that people have defaulted to when discussing like what's going on with getting him out of the club, if you like. Maybe Frank just really likes him. So plenty to be excited about. I think it was, yeah, a great performance overall from Spurs. I mean, Tell came on, yeah, whatever, mixed reviews. Archie Gray, I would say similar. Bergvall didn't have long on there, neither did Dominic Solanke. All in all, a frustrating night, a disappointing night, but plenty of positives to take from that one. Plenty of positives. Really, you know, it's a really bittersweet one, that. It's really bitter, because I am gutted that we didn't win that. I really thought we were going to do it. And it would have been so fun, because there's that part of me that sort of thought, you know, if we win the Super Cup, that kind of literally is Champions of Europe. That literally kind of does make you Champions of Europe, because it's the two European Cup winning teams playing off against one another, you know. So but we didn't do it. We didn't get it over the line. Frustrating. Quite sad, but we didn't get battered, obviously. And, you know, this is where we are. So it is a new season, obviously. There's a lot of new podcasts. Well, there's new podcast start. So I've got that going this season. Got a new microphone. Hopefully you're hearing that. Hopefully it sounds a bit better. Hope, you know, there we go. For anybody watching this on YouTube, you'll see that I have a new sort of background setup. I've got a load of Spurs. If you are listening to this, just come onto YouTube. I think it's Dash Tetrung on YouTube, and I've got lots of my different little bits of Tottenham memorabilia. For anyone watching right now, I'm currently pointing at my two first games I ever went to at Tottenham. That's Tottenham against Chelsea in 1996. We drew 1-1. And then Spurs against Nottingham Forest in 1997. We lost 1-0 to them there. Here, I've got a little book, which is, it's basically like it's the start of the season, like, I don't know, pre-season program from the 1960-1961 season. Obviously, the season we won the double. And there's a good little, like, I got it at a car boot sale once. There's a chairman's note in the beginning where he's basically saying, like, we hope we make this a season to remember and all that sort of thing. So it's nice. The first, like, got program from the first game I ever went to against Chelsea, one from the program from the last North London derby at the old White Hart Lane. Obviously a Bilbao program. I wasn't at Bilbao, but I bought one afterwards. You know, they were selling it at the trophy parade, so I thought, why not? Got the program from Ledley King's testimonial. I've got a program from, I can point to it there, Tottenham against Man City in the Champions League. And then a bit further up, there's one of Kane on a photo shoot that I worked at. But anyway, new things. I'm trying to make it all look a bit nicer. So I hope you appreciate that. I'm signed up now with the Sports Social Network, which is great. They're helping to, like, you know, give the podcast an extra push, give me some tips, all this type of stuff, open up further sort of opportunities for me to work with brands and all that type of thing. So to increase the size of the podcast, all that type of thing. It's all very exciting. What I would appreciate from everybody is if you do enjoy this, like, drop it a like, subscribe. If you are listening to it, leave a rating, leave a review, share the podcast. You know, like I say, whenever you see like Reddit threads saying like, which Spurs podcast should I listen to? Say, Roll the Roost. I like it. The guy who does it, Jack, is a bit of a melt, but I quite like it sometimes. I find it quite prosaic sometimes in a heat of defeat or whatever. He can sometimes prattle on about something that it can be amusing in that moment. So whatever, you know, I'm not writing your sort of Reddit post to me for you anyway, but do something like that. That'd be good. And also, if you really aren't sick of the sound of my voice, I've got a Patreon, patreon.com/RTRpod. So yeah, sign up for that and enjoy. But to start the season, Premier League is back this weekend. Got the Burnley game on the Patreon. Well, tomorrow I've got James Moore. I've got the Athletics James Moore on the pod, doing a Q&A pod. So please do tweet me or send me messages on Blue Sky or Instagram. You'll find me to trunk on all of those. Send me any questions that you want for James Moore. I'll be recording with him tomorrow. On the Patreon, I'll be doing a Burnley preview on Friday. So sign up. Why not sign up? Why not sign up for a Patreon free trial at first and see all the wonderful things you're getting on there. And you can also listen back to all the content I did this summer. The You Had to Be There Spurs content, when I was talking to a variety of different people about all their favourite Spurs games from down the years. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed listening to this. I hope it's helped in some way. It's helped me, as it always does, to talk about it, getting it off my chest. It's gutting. We lost. But look, there's plenty to look forward to. Big season ahead of us. Come on, you Spurs. I appreciate it. Back for another year. Get in there. Come on, you Spurs. Up the Spurs. Much love, everybody. Bye-bye.